our goal is really to fundamentally shift the way that the average home is designed and operated. And we wanted to make sure that we created a system that could be implemented without substantial cost premiums by any motivated designer, builder, operator, or owner.
In 2014, the International Well Building Institute, IWBI, introduced the Well Building Standard, the world's first building standard to focus on enhancing people's health and well being through the built environment. At the time, most building standards like LEED and BREEAM focused almost exclusively on sustainability and the built environment's impact on the planet. Well, however, was focused on the humans who occupied those buildings. And while it was on the roadmap to eventually include residential buildings, the Well Building Standard was initially optimized for commercial and institutional buildings. After 2020, when much of the world shifted to working from home and spending more time at home, it catalyzed IWBI to develop a flexible roadmap that would fundamentally shift the standard of design for residences, one that prioritized human health and well being. And they wanted this new standard to be accessible to everyone, from architects to interior designers to engineers and even homeowners. In this interview, Liz Miles, the Vice President of Residential at IWBI, explains the history of the residential standard, how it came to be, what it entails, and a few notable projects that have already achieved the certification.
So I actually have been with the Greater International Well Building Institute and the parent company Delos for over a decade. So I started with them in New York City in 2014 during the initial launch of the Well program, which was very exciting. My background is in residential real estate development. My family business in Chicago is a small residential real estate construction, property management, and design firm. So I do come from that background. I've grown up in that world. And then with IWBI launching this Well for Residential program recently, it's been a very exciting moment for me after a decade of commercial work.
Cool. That's amazing. Um, so I was kind of curious. So obviously, Well has been around for a while, but it was a little more geared towards commercial building. What prompted Well for residential?
So, since the beginning of Well in 2014, we always said Well is for all except single family homes. Well for single family homes was always a part of the roadmap, but it wasn't
Mhm.
until 2021 that we were really able to pull together the group of experts and really focus on developing a program specifically for residential. The launch of residential, Well for Residential, is a very exciting moment for IWBI because we believe that everyone deserves a healthy home, and a healthy home is the foundation for people to live their best and healthiest lives. Unfortunately, most homes across the world are not built with health in mind. And we really observed a dawning of awareness since the outbreak of the pandemic on the connection between home and health, coupled with the increase of people working from home or in a hybrid work model. They were spending more time at home and started to realize the impacts of their home on their health. So, given this uptick in demand, we set out to fundamentally shift the standard of design for all residences from single family homes to units and multifamily buildings. And our goal, really, with this program is to create a flexible roadmap for healthier homes that can be utilized by all building professionals, from architects to designers, engineers, developers, home builders, operates, and even homeowners.
That actually kind of leads to one of my other questions was, is this more suited for a particular type of residential build versus another? For instance, is it geared towards retrofitting and renovations or more towards new builds?
It applies to both. So it can be applied to new construction as well as existing. I would say we are working on identifying more point earning opportunities for existing homes. One of the customers that we're working closely with is Corvius, which is a private military home operator on behalf of the Department of Defense. And they have enrolled 22,000 units across 7 military installations in the United States.
So are they one of the pilot participants?
Yes, they are.
I was curious how that kind of came together. Was there, how did you select your initial pilot? participants?
Great question. So, as I mentioned, this has been a long time coming. So, the Well for Residential standard builds upon the work that we've already done with our multifamily residential customers for our well certification and well ratings programs. So, those multifamily residential developers and operators have really been leaders in this space. And their experiences have helped to inform and inspire the development of the Well for Residential program. And the advisory that we put together in 2021 was initially created for single family homes, but we quickly learned during that development process that this program should apply across all residential types, from single family homes to units within multifamily buildings. So we learned quite a bit from our advisory members, which consisted of builders and developers, architects and engineers, building scientists, even people from government and academia. So they were really helpful in developing and informing the Well for Residential program. In May of 2023, we opened the program for pilot enrollment. And since then have been working very closely with dozens of early adopters across 17 countries who are applying the program to more than 30,000 residences. So the main goal of this pilot is to collect industry feedback, which will help to evolve the standard and eventually bring it out of pilot for wider adoption.
Wow, 30,000 residences. Was it limited to a certain number of pilot participants?
It was not limited. So it was open to anyone that was ready to demonstrate their leadership and had a desire to lead the market with a commitment to healthier and more resilient homes. So it was mostly organically generated from our advisory members as well as existing well customers. But at the same time, our well customers and advisory members have been very strong advocates in getting the word out. So we have a handful of newcomers as well, which has been really rewarding. And we did make a strong effort during the initial recruitment period to ensure that pilot participation is inclusive and equitable, so that all types were included: existing, new, market rate, affordable. Um,
Mm.
and a lot of those early participants we put out press releases with in the end of 2023. And then we did our global press release in 2024. So that helped to generate interest as well.
And I know of at least one project that's been completed, has been in the press as of late. But I was curious how many, if any others have been completed.
Yes, so Capla Manzano, the single family home in Miami, has received a lot of attention as they deserve all the attention. It's the first well residence in the world. So that's been a wonderful project, wonderful team to work with. They already had a lot of the strategies in their design. There were just some minor tweaks that they made, but their main goal in developing this home was for climate resilience and well-being. So the Well for Residential certification really validated a lot of what they were already doing. So it's a confidence booster to them that they were on the right path, and their initial success will be helpful in future developments. The second project that has achieved the well residence designation is in Japan, in Osaka. This project was completed over a year ago, so it was already an
Wow.
existing building. It's comprised of 210 studio units, specifically for corporate employees. So their consultant Shimizu had a lot of experience with Well V2, so they already had many strategies already in place. But again, you can see a single family home in Miami and a corporate housing development in Osaka, Japan can both achieve well for residential.
Wow, that's amazing. I'll have to look that one up too.
Mhm.
Um, so speaking of the Caplo Manzano, the CM1 project, I think they're calling it,
Mhm.
there were some really just innovative design and construction methods used, such as eliminating the use of drywall and removing all ductwork. But I was curious if there were any particular approaches that stuck out to the well advisory team as just really exceptional methods for supporting well being.
Definitely. That was so many great features that they had implemented in that project specifically. Our reviewer most enjoyed the accessible plumbing panels in the walls, so that if there was ever a leak, it can be addressed quickly with minimal disturbance. That was, I would say, the most innovative that we've seen in that submission. Overall, they focused on primary health concerns in South Florida specifically. So that would mainly be mold and moisture control, as well as resilience against high winds and flooding. So the entire house is raised, no drywall, ductwork, and then the accessible plumbing panels. So I would say that was the most innovative that we saw in that project specifically.
Have you seen any other innovative approaches emerge from other pilot participants or projects that are currently in progress?
Definitely. Every project is doing something different. But they all come together to address the various challenges of indoor environmental quality in a holistic way. And that's really what Well for Residential tries to achieve. We wanted it to be flexible and addressing health in a way that is holistic based on latest research, best practice, but of course, what is specifically important to that project in that location. Health and well-being means different things across the world. There's various codes and standards across the world for residential. So our program really allows for that flexibility to choose what is most important to them. Um, we've also seen a lot of organizations align their existing design guidance or standards with Well for Residential, which has been really exciting. For example, Johnson Development is a 5,000 home development over a 10 to 12-year timeline. It's outside of Houston, and they have over 10 builders delivering those 5,000 homes. So Johnson Development already had a contract with these builders on what they're expecting in their homes at a base level. So they were able to incorporate Well for Residential in those contracts with the builders. So each of those 10 builders are expected to deliver a well residence across the 10 to 12-year timeline. So again, that's another great example of aligning well with an existing design standard or guidance. Another approach that we've seen is projects choosing to start with one building and then using that as kind of the pilot, their own little pilot, using our pilot to eventually scale it across their entire development. So we have seen that. As I mentioned before, Corvius, which is the privatized military operator on behalf of the US Department of Defense, they did that where they implemented Well for Residential in their design guidelines, and they're rolling it out across the 22,000 homes in a tiered approach. So they have policy and operations that they can roll out day one across all 22,000 units, and then they're taking a phased approach for each military base based on a 7-step wellness program. So eventually, over however many years, all 22,000 homes will have the same health and well-being interventions.
Wow. Yeah, I love that it really covers such a wide swath of, everything from addressing indoor air quality to access to nutritious foods and things like that.
Mhm.
It's really such a comprehensive program. Um, and I noticed that there is a lot of alignment between the well standard and well for residential, where it seems like both really emphasize air quality. But I noticed it seems like there's a lot more features dedicated to thermal comfort and movement in the residential program. And I don't know if that's true, or what would you say are some of the key differences and similarities?
Yes. So the well building standard, well version 2, really informed the development of well for residential. But a lot of features within well for residential are new. So some of them aspire to the same health intent as features in well v2, but they've been written specifically for the home environment. Um, and we made these adjustments because we know that homes aren't tiny commercial buildings. They are very different. And a lot of these strategies should be applied differently to a residential application. So that's really what we focused on over those 2 years of development with the advisors, was to understand from existing evidence, literature, and experience that the pathways to achieving maybe the same health intent would be different from commercial. So we wanted to create a system that would speak specifically to a home environment. For example, sleeping. So you're sleeping in a home environment. So the design strategies that we deploy in our homes can massively impact both the quality and the duration of our sleep. These strategies range from tunable lighting to improved air quality to better acoustics and shading. So many of for many of us, the most important thing that we can do to immediately improve our state of health and well-being is to consistently get a good night's sleep. So that's a good example of a big difference. Where nourishment, one that you mentioned, would be different in a home environment, is looking at low and no additional cost design strategies. The research shows that consuming food prepared away from home is associated with lower fruit and vegetable intake and a higher body mass index. So we do have a feature that includes providing private or shared food production space, a raised garden bed or greenhouse with planting capacity suitable for food, or even hydroponic or aeroponic farming systems suitable for growing food. So this is something that would be applicable in a residential environment. And then again, thermal, like you mentioned, is definitely something that's different in a home environment, as temperature changes throughout the day, and it's different for sleeping versus working, and needs to accommodate a wide range of activities in the home.
Does the number of features indicate the level of importance?
Mhm. Great question. It does not, but we did go through a weighting exercise to determine point values for each feature, which aligns with health impact. So the higher the points, the higher the health impact. So that was the way that
Okay.
we addressed the weighting.
And then I noticed too that a lot of or I think all of the preconditions were removed and all of the features are made optional. Um, what was the strategy behind that?
Yes. So I know a lot of our customers are cheering that decision. But that was a really important piece of feedback that we received specifically from our multifamily residential customers. As I mentioned before, there's so many different codes and laws pertaining to residential across the globe. So it's really difficult to say what collection of features has to be met by everyone. So allowing for flexibility is of utmost importance to accommodate global differences and also differences in the project goals and their starting point. Um, so that was the reason that we removed preconditions. But what is required is a minimum of 40 points. So there is a minimum requirement of 40 out of 197 points available. Like I said, we are adding additional point earning opportunities for existing buildings, but the goal is to hit that 40-point minimum, depending on where you're located, what your goals are, and what your starting point is.
That makes sense. Yeah, because to your point too, it's like that home in Miami, them raising it up, specific to that climate where that wouldn't be necessary where I am in Phoenix. So,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
yeah. I was just curious too with obviously with more of the commercial buildings, you can get a little decal to display that it's been well certified. What what happens with residential once you get the certification? Is there anything kind of like that?
Yes, we do have a well residence mark, and it is also up to you on how you'd like to display it. There are some parameters. You need to make sure that the seal is displayed in a way that's appropriate with what has been certified. So, you don't want to display a seal somewhere that isn't on the home or the entrance to the building. But the seal, you can get it as a sticker. We've worked with custom vendors that the project has chosen to work with if they want to do something more custom. We've even had conversations with customers that want to put this seal like a in the cement steps to the entrance of their home, kind of like a established in you know 1979. It could also be well residence certified in 2024. So we've that's been a fun piece of feedback as well.
It's a cool idea. Yeah, I like that. Do you foresee consumers starting to ask their interior designers or architects or builders for well standardizations?
Absolutely. Well for Residential was developed to answer a market call. As I mentioned before, that dawning of awareness that happened around the time of the outbreak of COVID, where people really started to understand the connection between their health and our buildings. There has been an elevated need for healthier homes. Even before COVID, we've heard about lead and asbestos and radon and other mold. If you've gone through a home inspection, all of these things that need to be addressed. But the market need has been much more elevated in the past few years. And that growing need is in tandem with healthier schools, healthier offices, hotels. It's really across the board in all of the built environment. And we've really seen in the past 5 years, well adoption has grown nearly tenfold around the world. Today, well is used across nearly 80,000 commercial and residential locations in about 140 countries. And that translates to about 5.5 billion square feet of real estate worldwide. So we expect a market uptick in the adoption of well for residential because it provides that roadmap and that alignment and that third party validation that architects, designers, developers, builders, and operators look for when they're going out to develop a home. There's so much information out there about various different things. So having a third party validated standard that has everything in one place is really helpful for everyone.
I recently read an article too. They were tracking the kind of rise and fall of different standardizations and certification programs, and there was one other one that were kind of rising to the top, and then some of the others were kind of trickling away. But so that's promising.
Yes. Hope that
Yeah,
trajectory continues. Yeah.
definitely. I was curious. It seems like there's more awareness around what we bring into our homes as far as furnishings, what we're putting on the walls, flooring, just materials that we use for the interior, and what chemicals those could potentially be introducing into the space. So I was curious how important interior material selection is as part of well.
It's very important. And actually, this feature in the Wealth Residential program, you can earn up to 13 points, which is the most of any other feature. As I mentioned
Wow,
before, that weighting demonstrates the 13 points demonstrates how important it is. Material health in particular is difficult to navigate. So in our program, we reference the Healthy Building Network Informed tool. That's a new tool specifically for residential that can help navigate those questions around building materials. They have a color code and a really helpful way of being able to calculate and categorize all of your different building materials and how your selection is impacting your health. And then in turn, you can earn points in well for residential.
that's interesting. I actually have that tab pulled up on my computer right now. That's funny.
Yep.
Um, so I know that well, I was reading that one of the goals for the Well Residential program was really to kind of transform the global residential market to kind of ensure that everyone has access to a home that enhances their health. Um, so I was just curious, with that in mind, and perhaps in the absence of a vast budget, are there some strategies that designers or even maybe the homeowner can implement to help achieve that wellness at home?
Mhm. Absolutely. Although well for residential can be applied to one-off single-family homes, we are hoping to drive change at scale and really reach
Mm.
that market transformation. So we are positioning well for residential to help home builders and operators as they scale their application. Um, our goal is really to fundamentally shift the way that the average home is designed and operated. And we wanted to make sure that we created a system that could be implemented without substantial cost premiums by any motivated designer, builder, operator, or owner. On the individual homeowner side, the standard will be publicly accessible to everyone by the end of September in our forum, which is our community platform. I highly encourage everyone to engage with us there. You can read through all of the program requirements once it's published in there. Any homeowner with the right knowledge of healthy homes can leverage the standard and create a healthier home. Though we, of course, do encourage homeowners, developers, and operators to work with experts. So we have a wide network of well APs who can help anyone pursuing well for residential on their journey.
Okay. And maybe this is not an appropriate question, but if, because so many of these features just tie into each other, but if they had to prioritize one or maybe a couple, which features would you prioritize?
That's a definitely a tough one. I would say I would prioritize personally air quality. I think air quality is fundamentally important. As you said, that ties into materials. But I think, we're seeing also in a lot of places, outdoor air isn't necessarily better than indoor air. I specifically live in Los Angeles where wildfires and pollution is still a major concern. So being able to have the ability in your home to filter your indoor air in bad when there's bad outdoor air is really important. And of course, learning a lot about even the cleaning products that you use that impacts air quality. Like having a HEPA filter on your vacuum. There are what I would say low hanging fruit strategies to improve air quality that anyone from a renter to a homeowner can implement. But I would say from a health impact, that's very important. But again, it's very hard to choose because they're all important. But my vote would be air quality.
No, thank you. Yeah, I kind of put you on the spot there. I know that's that is, and so many of the features impact air quality. So yeah, it kind of all ties together.
Mhm.
Um, so what's next for the Well for Residential program?
What's next? We are continuing enrollment in the pilot. So anyone that is interested in enrolling can still do so. We will be continuing to work with our pilot participants for another 1 to 2 years to ensure that we collect all of the feedback that we need to eventually graduate the program out of pilot and enable the program for wider adoption.
I can't wait to watch it kind of unfold. One last question.
Mhm.
In addition to perhaps, going through the process of becoming a well AP, what are there any tools or resources you can recommend to designers to maybe learn a little bit more about how to actually implement some of these strategies?
Yes, great question. In addition to becoming a well AP, I would say is more of the general well knowledge. It isn't specifically updated for well for residential. We are working on new materials, educational materials that are specific to well for residential. But the best place will be that program that will be publicly available in the forum at the end of September. Uh, you'll be able to read through every single feature, all of the requirements, the verification methods, and even all of the citations. It's almost 300 pages,
Oh,
but it's a great read.
yeah, yeah. I think that's what I was sifting through, and it really is fascinating.
Mhm.
It's, it's pretty
Yeah,
interesting. Well, thank you so much. This has been just really informative, and yeah, I'm excited to watch the program kind of roll out and see what happens.
my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. This is a really exciting moment for us, but I think also for the wider community and industry. This has been a long time coming. It's been so wonderful to see the enthusiasm. We're getting inquiries every day. Just, I've been waiting for this. I'm so excited. Where can I get more? And we're trying our best to keep up with the influx of interest, but more to come. We're really happy to have reached this moment after the 2-year development period, and we're especially grateful to our pilot participants who are really leading the charge and on this journey with us. Those are really the MVPs of the industry who lead the rest.
Since the recording of that interview, the Well for Residential has officially launched, and Corvius, the military housing Liz mentioned, officially announced the achievement of the Well for Residential certification among 50 homes in its Fort Meade and Fort Liberty housing units in Maryland and North Carolina. This initial sample of 50 homes is important because it demonstrates that wellness standards can be achieved without expensive renovations, complete overhauls, or new construction. And that's great news for designers and homeowners alike. There will be a link to the Well for Residential Standards in the show notes if you're interested in learning more. Until next time.